They exited the city, and the number of trees gradually grew more numerous as they pushed forward. They were tense, and everyone kept their guard up. Every pine became a potential hiding place. Each boulder was dangerous. Atheros had tried to reassure them that those among them with soul sight would be able to give a heads up before any attack, but it was of little comfort to Leo. The rest of the day continued like this. Leo was tense, his muscles tight. He rubbed his temples, desperate to lessen the pounding in his head. As night fell, the harbinger of their troubles made its presence known. Leo saw the eye again. Elizabeth, too. It was brighter than before, and was moving ever so slightly closer. Etheros frowned, and Annabel and Petro did as well. They all looked toward the glowing eye before Leo said anything. "What is that?" asked Martin. "I don't know. It's been trailing us for a few days, but it's never been this close," replied Leo. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed. "It looks familiar, but I can't say from where." "Same." Petro shuddered. "Maybe next time report that sooner." "Indeed," grumbled Etheros. "'Cause we got company now." "I'm sorry," said Leo. "We didn't want to worry the others, and I wasn't even sure it was an eye until now." Atheros turned back toward the others. "Hang on tight." He whipped forward, driving the wagon faster. Magnus and Rupert lived up to their Maxime heritage as they blazed down the road. And yet the glowing eye kept pace. Leo found himself drawn to it, even in the tumult. They rode through the night, the yellow light unceasingly following, getting closer and closer. It was high in the trees, no less than 10 feet tall. "What is that thing?" muttered Petro. "It's not a Melim, and a Leviathan would be bigger." "Maybe a true Nephilim?" replied Martin. Leo turned to Martin. "What kind of Neph can go that fast?" "Much like their Nephilim descendants, true Nephilim can vary wildly in shape and size," said Etheros. Dawn broke, and the trees thinned, abandoning them to the danger slowly closing in. The gray morning sun slowly illuminated a massive figure. It was galloping toward them. Leo couldn't tell where the rider ended and the mount began. Leo gasped, and the memories came flooding back. Leo and Giovanni had been hired along with other ragtag mercenary to defend the village of Vensi. It was a poor venture. They stood no chance. The town was destroyed, and their forces routed. The Ravagers outnumbered them. Their arrows were as numerous as raindrops, and their lances were swift. Giovanni was dead, pierced by a giant arrow the size of a tree trunk. His body lay at the feet of a monster. He had the lower body of a horse and the upper body of a man, covered in scale and mail. A long, intricately braided black beard rained from his chin. He had only one good eye, which glowed yellow like a parody of the sun. Flames surrounded them. Smoke trailed up into the heavens. All Leo could do was play dead. He'd pressed himself against the ground, was appearing to have been crushed by rubble. He struggled to hold his breath and fought hard to avoid whimpering or crying. All he could remember was that eye. That cursed eye. "Ireo is his name," Elizabeth spat. "Bringer of wrath." Leo turned toward her. "You know him too?" Elizabeth turned toward him. "Yes. He was the one who destroyed my village and slaughtered my family. He's the one who killed Gio." "This marauder gets around," said Petro. "When your war band is as swift as his, you can go anywhere you want to," muttered Etheros. The sun rose, and with it the true scope of their peril. Ireo was not alone. A great host of riders huddled around him. These Melim were not the brigands Leo had encountered on the river. These were more regimented and disciplined. Their lamellar armor was well kept, and their shields sturdy. They held composite bows, sharp spears, and glaives. Most of the Malim were like Ireo, half horse, half humanoid. Others were among them who shared their spirit. They rode horses, wolves, and other beasts. Ireo wielded a massive bow, a weapon so large it would have been a ballista to a smaller creature. He gave a curt nod, and his underlings whooped and hollered as they charged. "Cowards!" snapped Elizabeth. "These wretches only go after easy targets. Is it any wonder Claudius drove them off?" "Or why they never go after Benelim," said Petro. Atheros smirked and added, "Or Godshards. Let's teach them a lesson. Can someone else take the reins?" "Not Leo," muttered Petro. "I'll do it." "No, I will," said Annabel as she crawled to the reins, grasping them bitterly. "You need to use your crossbow. Martin at least has a gun. I have nothing. This way I can do something useful, this time before anyone gets hurt." All right, if you insist," sputtered Petro. "Here they come!" shouted Leo. The first row of raiders raised their bows. Arrows whispered into the air. "Take cover!" Projectiles punctured the wood and stabbed through the cloth. Petro returned fire, and one by one Malim fell. Another volley rained down, and they ducked. Elizabeth gripped her gizarm tightly. "We're outgunned! I don't know how many more volleys we can take." Atheros grinned. "Let them fire. They'll be the architects of their own death." The arrows poured down time and again. The canopy was soon nothing but torn fabric, and light bled through. Leo and Elizabeth dodged arrows. Their food stores were leaking, and one fell between Martin's legs, missing his body by inches. Atheros muttered a spell. All the arrows, metal, and feathers, and shafts merged into a single mass. He turned toward a nearby tree and reached out an arm. The trunk snapped with a crack, and the splintered wood joining the forming assembly on top of the wagon. The mass stretched out, and a rope coil connected the bow's two arms. A clip of bolts fed into it. At last, the body and sights of their new ballista took shape. Elizabeth grinned as she aimed the weapon. "This might be your best spell you've ever cast." The Malim gaped and cursed. The bolts rained down upon the Malim, helmets torn and bodies impaled. A bolt shot a wolf through the heart, and his rider died beneath him. In response, they scattered, brandishing lances as they closed in. Atheros muttered a spell and pointed at the feet of the charging raiders. Many stopped in their tracks, and their hooves and claws struggled to find footing. They sank into the ground, too heavy for most to climb out. Still more came, leaping over the quicksand or riding around. Ireo remained stoic, watching the group flee with a calculating gaze. His single, glowing yellow eye was unreadable. The lancers pulled up to the wagon. The first of them moved to strike. Leo was ready for him. He parried his glaive before decapitating him. One came up from the other side. A fabulous spotted feline with saber teeth latched onto the side while its rider drew a curved blade. Elizabeth hooked him off his mount, slamming him into the dirt. The cat swiped at her, leaving her arm with fresh gashes. She gritted her teeth before stabbing the cat in the chest, shoving it away. Leo clashed blades with another raider. She matched his blows with consummate grace. With a shove of her hilt, Leo's back hit the wagon's floor. A lead shot dented her skull. Her corpse fell away. Martin blew the smoke off his pistol. A group of Malim charged the wagon from the front. Arrows flew forward. One glanced at Rupert, and his pacing faltered. The wagon shook violently. "A little help here?" asked Annabel. Atheros turned to face them. He muttered another incantation. The air began to sizzle in front of the raiders. Moments later, an explosion rang out. The Malim shot in all directions. The wagon persevered through the lingering blaze. "Thanks," muttered Annabel. A wolf pounced on top of the wagon, clawing and tearing frantically. Leo impaled the beast. Its rider brought down his spear, and Petro deflected the blade with his antler before stabbing him in the chest. In the distance, Ireo was still watching them, frowning. He shook his head and sighed, raising his bow and preparing an arrow. Martin pointed. Guys? They hurriedly shoved the wolf's corpse off their wagon. Ireo drew the string back. Hurry! Hurry! Barked Leo. I'm trying! Elizabeth aimed with the ballista. They both fired. 3 seconds. That was all it took for things to go from bad to worse. In the first second, the two projectiles raced toward each other. In the second, Elizabeth's bolt disappeared in splintered wood. In the third, Ireo's arrow ripped through the bottom of the wagon, demolishing its wheels and knocking the horses loose. Magnus and Rupert retreated into the pines. Pieces of wood launched into the air. The ballista was gone, along with most of their provisions. The group and the wreckage of the wagon rolled off the path. The snapping of wood drowned out their screaming as pine trees bent and twisted around them. At long last their course ended when they collided with a stone. Everyone groaned. Leo stared up into the sky. The world was spinning. That was a first for Leo. Unlike many things as of late, he didn't think it would be the last. Etheros was on his feet first. Anyone hurt? All he received were strings of swears. One by one they all rose to their feet. Gratefully, they were all in one piece. But they all had cuts and bruises they didn't have several minutes ago. Annabelle rushed to look over everyone. The trampling of hooves reminded them of the danger. They rushed to grab what they could carry. Pitifully little could come with them. Leo looked at what they had landed. A great rocky formation stood before them. Greystones rising from the earth, going on for miles ahead. The lower peaks of the God's Teeth Mountains, beckoning like castle walls. Thank Terra, it was a place to flee where Ireo couldn't follow. Etheros pointed up and said, This way! I've never climbed a mountain before, whimpered Martin. The hollering of the Melim was getting louder. In the distance they saw a cloud of dust, raiders swinging around the conifers and pines with peerless skill. Ireo led the attack, plowing through the trees like twigs. We'll never get high enough, shouted Leo. Elizabeth rushed to the closest rock face. We have no other option. Without our horses, we're completely vulnerable. Come on! That won't be necessary, said Etheros, chanting another incantation. Leo felt a familiar sensation wrap over his body. Oh, not this again, Etheros! The 6 of them floated into the air. At least Leo wasn't alone this time. They could all scream together. Leo knew better than to flail his limbs now. Etheros was straining, and his teeth gritted. He got to the closest rock face he could, just above the tree line. Don't ever do that again, spat Elizabeth as she shoved past Etheros, getting as far from the edge as possible. I'm with Elizabeth on this one, muttered Martin. It was better than last time for me, said Leo. Martin rolled his eyes. Oh, that's reassuring. I expected more, bellowed a deep voice. A yellow glowing light twinkled amongst the evergreens beneath them. The so-called 6 strangers I've heard everyone talking about, crawling up into the mountains like vermin. This isn't over. Leo peered down at him and shouted, Of course it's not! You killed my brother! I've killed many brothers. You'll have to be more specific. Leo simmered. His name was Giovanni. He died in the village of Vensi 10 years ago. The golden eye flickered, and Ireo sighed. I don't remember. Names, places, people. You die all the same. Cities, kingdoms, and empires all fall to ruin. It's all dust, all meaningless. I missed out on the Lazarus 7, but when I heard another group was rising that was of similar spirit, I just had to meet them, even if I wasn't helping some friends. Etheros' eyes narrowed. Who are these friends? You know I cannot say, Adamite. You shouldn't have come this far west. I know your journey to the island city. There's nowhere you can go that I can't find you. Why don't we just speed everything along? Come back down here and accept your fate. You're only delaying the inevitable." The 6 strangers spat swears in reply. "Huh. So be it. I'll be seeing you soon." The glowing eye faded into the dark. "What the hell are we going to do?" shouted Elizabeth. "We're safe for now," said Etheros. Martin sat down. The stone was supremely uncomfortable. He rubbed his temples. "We lost all our food, the wagon, our horses. And Hyreo is still stalking us," said Leo. "Where do we go from here?" Atheros peered over the rocky labyrinth. Long paths trailed through the stone, and the higher peaks loomed over them. "We head north. Stay on the rocks. It'll be easy. They go for miles. Hyreo can't reach us." Leo nodded and said, There's a slope we should be able to descend. About 4 days north." "4 days?" moaned Martin. "We have no food." Elizabeth leaned against the rocky shelf and said, "That's not even the worst part. Hyreo is going to be waiting for us. He knows there's nowhere we can descend that he won't get to first." "That still buys us time," said Etheros. "Time to think of a plan." Elizabeth turned to Etheros, head tilted in bafflement. "Plan for what? Our deaths?" Petro shuddered. "One arrow. That was all it took. One blasted arrow." Elizabeth snapped to Petro. "That wasn't an arrow. That was a thunderbolt." Etheros' glowing eyes flared. "One way or another, we have to take him down. He's cut us off from the island city. They might be able to sense our presence if we keep heading north. Let's get moving. It's a long way to go."